And Kayla is gone too. And Adam, Kayla is yours, or Dr. Crawley, sorry, we're in public. Dr. Crawley, Kayla she's language, literacy, and culture. So I really wanted you to meet her. At some point you'll meet her. Okay, but I've hit record so that way they can be a part of this when they come back and see it. Okay. Now are you seeing this plan of study meeting slide? Yes. Okay, so plan of study, Rachel just did hers. So when she gets back, maybe next Tuesday, we'll have her tell us a little bit about it. But with your plan of study, you have to have that done prior to the end of the third semester. And for you all in the cohort, it's probably going to be pretty easy because we have a very set slate of courses that you're going to take on certain dates and certain semesters. So your plans of study are going to be pretty easy. You do have to have a meeting before you can sign off in the electronic version that you're ready to move forward on your plan of study. So what you do step by step is you fill out this coursework with your advisor at the URL you're seeing on the screen. And what worked really well typically is to take a printed copy and bring it to the meeting, and then we can all write on it and have ideas and share ideas. So what your committee is going to do is they're going to come up with ideas on what other courses might fit really well with your personal interests and with the degree. And then they'll also want to hear about just your initial ideas of where your research might go and what you might be interested in research-wise. So you want to come prepared with those kind of things. You typically send out a doodle poll to see which committee members are available when. It typically doesn't take a whole hour, but it's good to plan for a whole hour. And often you might have one committee member come in on Zoom or something like that. It's really hard to get committee members together. So you typically go with 4. We've talked about that before. You can have 5 committee members, but honestly, 4 tends to be easier to get everybody together. So that's going to happen somewhere before the end of your third semester. With you all in the cohort, we may just do it in the spring, just to have it out of the way. That might be easier. Okay, the next big milestone is qualifying exams. I was so terrified of qualifying exams, I can't even tell you. But my advisor kept telling me it's in our best interest that you do well on these, and we prepare you and things like that. But it details in the handbook for the PhD in education on page 7. You can read thoroughly about qualifying exams and how it works. And different options, like Dr. Neumann and I are in the educational technology option. Dr. Crawley is in the professional ed studies. It may have changed to literacy. Has it? Adam, do you know?
It's still professional education. I'm in the literacy program area within elementary ed, within professional education.
We hide you well. So in this handbook, different option areas may do it a little bit different. The program area has the option of having all take home. So you might have 2 weeks, for example. We'll give you 4 questions and you write on them for 2 weeks. It's honestly like writing 4 different papers addressing a large question is what it's like. When you do take home, it's expected that you have a lot more references and that you're backing up your work with research. When you come in and do the sit down portion, the expectation isn't quite as high because you can't have the internet and you can't have books with you. And so you're just answering cold. The way to start thinking about qualifying exams and preparing them right now, we have on our specific to the ed tech option, we have a list of readings that are essential for a PhD in educational technology. And I'm sure that if you're, for example, Kayla in language, literacy, and culture, she could go to Dr. Crawley and say, what are some of the seminal works in this field that I need to be reading now to help with qualifying exams? And so each of your option areas will have that. Stacy Warner, I think Social Foundations has theirs on their website, but do ask your main advisor, because you can start reading on that stuff now. Let's see, Gianna, let me think on secondary math ed. I would go directly to Dr. Utley and ask her for you. So reading those things ahead, that gives you a real well-rounded knowledge of your field. And the point of qualifying exams is to determine if you as a candidate are qualified to become a full candidate and move forward to work on your dissertation. So it's a true milestone. It's honestly, finishing the dissertation is a little bit anticlimactic compared to this. The qualifying exams are a huge deal. And I will be honest with you, we have had people who have not gotten past the qualifying exams and stayed. You may have heard the term ABD, or all but dissertation. They may have stayed at that point forever. So we want to talk early about it, and we want to help prepare you early for it and that sort of thing. How we do it here is you'll do your questions, either partially sit down and some take home or all take home. And then the committee will all read your responses. And they may decide, you know what, we've heard this person talk about these ideas in a way that we're not seeing in the writing. So therefore, we want to have an oral defense to give them the chance to talk us through their ideas. And that happens quite a lot. Some people just like to have that touch base time to talk through the qualifying exams. So don't feel like it's not good or bad. It's just what your committee determines that they want to do. Once you pass your qualifying exams, you're a candidate. You're an official candidate. And I've made a link to the admission to doctoral candidacy form. And that's a very specific form that you bring to that meeting. And it's very ceremonial that we all sign off on it. And then you're a candidate from then. You can take a retake. If you don't pass on the first time, you can take it a second time. And the committee will work probably different questions and that sort of thing. If you don't pass the second time, there's a process for getting the dean's approval and the graduate college's approval to take it the third time. So, and all of that's in the handbook. The typical questions you get are going to be related to where you're going with your dissertation. They're going to be related to research methodologies. Most of you are going to end up taking probably a qualitative research course, a couple of quantitative courses, and maybe even a mixed methods research course. So a great question for qualifying exams might be, you're looking at X for your dissertation, and here is the type of study or the question you're really interested in. What would that look like if it were a qualitative study? What would it look like if it were quantitative? And how would it look like if it were mixed methods? And so then you detail almost a short proposal in the different methodologies to show that you know the differences and things like that. That's a real typical kind of question on qualifying exams. Your specialization coursework factor greatly into that. So, and they're very individualized, because so even though like many of you in the cohort are taking the exact same courses, but your questions are going to be different because your individual research interests are different. So we tailor these questions to get you further with your dissertation research and that sort of thing, further your whole research agenda. Does that make sense? Any questions, or did y'all hang up? I can't see you anymore, so you better not have hung up.
We're here.
Okay.
No questions. We're sufficiently scared now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I went and printed off the list and looked at it real fast.
Okay, you're going to have to call me and say, I'm too terrified, I want to quit because of qualifying exams, and let me talk you out of it. Because I remember feeling that way about I didn't do my master's for a long time because I was scared of the comprehensive exams at the master's level, and that was just stupid. my advisor just was right. It's in our best interest that we prepare you well and get you through this. So I don't want to make light of it, but at the same time, we are here to help you be successful. Okay, the next big milestone, you're going to become a candidate, and then the next big milestone is your dissertation proposal hearing. And as part of your qualifying exams, you might have a piece or a question that is sort of like a prospectus of where you want to go with your dissertation. And then the dissertation proposal is a full chapters 1, 2, and 3, the introduction, the literature review, and the methodology chapter. Now, this meeting you want to get hammered on. I hate to say that, but if you have a really tough committee that makes you work very hard on your dissertation proposal, the rest of it goes so smooth that it just all falls into place. It's if they're too easy on you on the proposal hearing, you're going to have trouble with your dissertation as you're finishing it out. So most people cry after this meeting. Mine was so bad. My first dissertation proposal hearing was a total failure. The committee members on my committee couldn't even agree on the definition of qualitative research. And so we finally just shut the meeting down and quit. And my advisor said, look, either you let me pick this committee or you're going to have to find a different advisor because this committee cannot function together. And to be this far along, to have written the first 3 chapters and have it crash and burn like that was really hard. But the good part about it is then it put me on track to have it go really well. You want lots and lots and lots of input from your committee members at this proposal stage, because the rest of it then is going to go extremely well. The general rule is make sure your committee members have any document 2 weeks ahead. And that gets hard. You have certain deadlines from the graduate college that you need to pay attention to, and your advisor works with you on this. But you pay attention to those deadlines and then work backwards to when you can have your meeting, and then 2 weeks before that, you have to get your final copy to them. And that works not only with the proposal, but with the actual dissertation defense. Okay, so we get through, oh, yes, question.
So I was talking to one of the people in the math education today, and she was talking about the fact that her quals and her dissertation proposal were going to be submitted in a very significantly close amount of time. Is that generally true? Or is there usually a bit of a gap between those?
Man, that is a great question. The graduate college has asked us to make more of a gap than some of the programs do right now. So by the time you guys get there, I really feel like we had a big, long talk about this in leadership team and admin team these last few weeks, because the graduate college wants a very definite separation that you're a candidate when you pass your qualifying exams, and then your proposal defense is a completely separate event. And so what's been happening in practice, and Gianna, just like you talked about, that's what we've been seeing, is some people will even have the qualifying exams and your proposal defense as part of your oral defense of your qualifying exams. And that is a whole lot of stuff to do right at once. The philosophy behind this is you're qualifying to be turned loose to do your independent research on your dissertation. So the graduate college perspective, and I kind of agree with them, is don't turn me loose to do 3 chapters of a dissertation if somehow I'm going to fail my qualifying exams and can't move forward. And we have had people who have failed qualifying exams and that was it. They finished the program. They were done. So they don't come out with a PhD, but so it's a real tough thing. So the philosophy is make that cutoff that you pass your qualifying exams, and then you start on finalizing those first 3 chapters. You might have a prospectus at the time of qualifying exams, or one of the questions on your qualifying exam will be outlining your proposal for your dissertation. So I'm hoping you'll see more of a separation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we get to the defense. So you've passed your proposal, everybody's happy with it, and that meeting lasts, sometimes it's 2 or 3 hours because they're all talking about, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? And the thing you got to know about professors is they have a real vested interest in you doing good research, because it's, one, we love it, but two, it's an opportunity for us to get you ready to be a colleague someday and get you ready to do independent research on your own. And so a lot of time is spent on crossing every T and dotting every I. So your methodology, your plans, everything is lined up perfectly to turn you loose and do your dissertation research. So just get in your head that the dissertation proposal hearing is going to be pretty lengthy. I went into the dissertation defense, and this is the very last thing you do. I went into it thinking you could do it perfectly, and that's not true. Nobody does it perfectly, but I don't. So I always warn my students, there will be things that need changed in your dissertation defense. Nobody walks out of there with 0 changes. And I wasn't quite prepared for that. I thought I failed really miserably. And my advisor laughed because he said, no, that was not a failure. That was actually good. But I had a long list of things I needed to tweak before I turned in the final copy to the graduate college. And so that's what the dissertation defense is more about, is looking at that final product, you presenting your final product and celebrating how well it's gone. Did somebody have a question? I heard a mic. Okay. But then there's very specific, important forms that you fill out. And part of understanding this whole process is attending the Guide to Graduation for Thesis and Dissertation Candidates. And apparently this workshop can be done online now. I checked on that. So for you guys in Houston, this won't be a problem. And then you'll have these very important forms that you bring to the defense. And if it's a morning, you might bring some fruit and donuts. And it ends up being a real celebration at this point if you've done all the work preparing up to it. That's how we want it to be. It's more of a finalizing and a celebration. Does that timeline kind of make sense? Okay. I'm gonna unshare my screen. Doctor?
It does. I was just wondering, is this, and it may be, I may have just looked over it. Is this presentation already uploaded?
No.
Okay. Will it be?
Yes, and I think, I was thinking what might be helpful if I just upload the slides by themselves, plus I'll upload the recording of this whole session for the people who aren't here. So I'll do both. And I'll upload them on the schedule for today. Now, what you've got to do is not be scared of these processes. Just be knowledgeable about the processes, but don't let them scare you. They're very doable. I got through it. Okay, Dr. Crawley, Dr. Neumann, how different was this than what you guys went through? First, introduce yourselves, and how different was it than what you went through?
Okay, well, I'm Dr. Callie Neumann, and
I'm Dr. Adam Crawley.
And we actually both just graduated in May and summer from the University of Georgia. We are both coming from Athens, Georgia, and experienced the same thing mostly. We're in different programs, but things are fairly similar, I would say. Mm-hmm. We, typically formed our committees somewhere in our second year, I think, and then did comps, I think kind of when you were ready, but I did them in the fall of my third year. I ended up doing my prospectus in the spring of my third year as well.
Kind of early.
Yeah, and so we called the proposal the prospectus, and We aren't admitted to candidacy until after passing the prospectus. So after doing that, after passing the prospectus is when we did our dissertation studies, and then wrote the dissertations.
Yeah, so I think one thing that's important to know is that every university is a little different in how they do their process, but even within the same university, it might be different, and even within the same college, it might be different. So, and sorry, we also have a dog here with us, so if you hear some whining and squealing in the background, that's why. So Callie and I were we were both in literacy education, somewhat in the same program, but I was full on literacy education, and you were kind of straddling.
That was my cognate. So I was educational technology. We called it learning design and technology at UGA. So even within what we did, like I had to have my comps completed in 6 to 8 weeks, and you guys were.
Yeah. So, and we call comprehensive exams what you call qualifying exams here. And so in language and literacy ed, which is where I was, we had 3 questions. They were all take home, and we had up to 20 weeks to do them.
20 weeks?
Yeah. You didn't have to take your full 20 weeks, but you could. But they wanted article style ready to go into publication by the end of those 20 weeks. And so you could either do 3 papers, 20 pages in length each, so a total of 60 pages, or you could do 2 papers, 30 pages each in length. So either way, it was a total of 60 pages. And it also depended on your committee. So there was even some discrepancy within the same department, because some committee members would say that 60 pages had to include your references, and some committee members would say, or some faculty would say, oh, that's 60 pages of narrative, and then your references can be beyond that. So the reason I'm sharing this is just to say, really have that conversation with your advisor, have that conversation with your committee, find out what their expectations are, so you know exactly what you should do going in. Because I've had several friends who've been going through their qualifying exams or comprehensive exams, and they were thinking one thing, and then they were getting toward the end of their term to come and find out, oh no, they were going to have to condense a lot because their 60 pages had to include references.
Right.
So be clear from the get-go.
And even within, again, a discrepancy between the departments or the schools, I had 4 questions. They were very much, the first one was foundations of learning design and technology. The second one was about theory. The third one was about practice, or my cognate, which was language and literacy education. And the fourth one was a methods proposal for my dissertation. So it kind of guided me right into my prospectus. And other departments were not as cutthroat about, what the questions were. So it really definitely talk to your advisor and figure out what your program and what your committee is going to expect of you.
Yeah, because like in my program, so I did the 3-question option, and there's a methods question, there's a theory question, and then you have one that's more of a lit review question. And what we did was we actually co-designed our questions with our advisor, and then once we had kind of solidified the questions, then the questions went to the committee to get their input, and then there was a time where I was no longer part of the conversation, and the committee had input on all the questions, and then on my start date, my advisor would then send me the questions and say, here are your questions, your clock starts today, and go. So just know there's many different ways. And part of the reason I think that we share this is not only to inform your process that you're going through now or you're about to go through now, but if you decide that you want to go into higher education at some point, to just know that different universities do these in different ways. Does that help, Dr. Stansberry?
Yes. And that's very good advice, that really adhering to what your advisor and your committee says to do. One thing we've talked about, or we read about this week, our reading for this week was on the loneliness that you experience as a doc student, that you're especially, and I worry about this cohort because, this is just our first semester, and we're doing pretty well so far in 2 classes, getting to know one another at a distance. And a lot of our Houston colleagues are going to be in Stillwater in a couple of weeks, and so we'll meet face to face, and some of our instructors will go to Houston. But I still worry that we won't have that cohesiveness of coming through a doctoral program as a cohort. And so how did you guys get through that part of just the personal, social emotional kind of stuff of being a doc student?
So I think one of my biggest recommendations would be to form a writing group. And so whether that be, okay, a couple of you are in Houston, so you can get together, or a couple of you are in Tulsa, and so you can get together, even if it's just every other week, you might be working on your research, your writing partner might be working on something completely different related to their research, but there's just something about that designated time where you get together once a week or once a month or however frequently you can do it, and designating that time to come together. And what you do is you get together and you write, and then you can kind of set deadlines for one another. And, so like my writing partners at UGA, whenever we would finish one of our writing groups, we would say, here's what I accomplished today. Here's what I'm hoping to accomplish by the time that we meet again. And so there was this element of accountability. And so then when we got together the next time, I was able to say, yay, I met all my goals. I did this, this, and this. Or, oh, I wasn't as productive as I hoped to be, but here's where I am in the process. Just to be able to not feel so isolated. And I know people from other institutions, like there's a couple of professors who I read a lot of their research, and they're at different institutions in different states, but they still do their writing group. They just do it virtually, and they come up on webcam, once a week or once every couple of weeks. And even if it's just having that webcam up and they're not really sitting there talking, but they're both sitting there writing and they can bounce ideas off of one another during that time, I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah.
I think for me, I don't even know what I did. I wish I had done writing groups.
What's the dog?
I have a dog, so she kept me pretty entertained. But I think also making sure that I had, a life outside of the PhD was really important. When I first moved to Athens, I didn't really know anyone, and so I had to kind of get out of my shell and meet people. But it was also refreshing to meet people that were not in a PhD program or that were in a different area, right? So they weren't just the learning design and technology or the ed tech people. And I could kind of, talk with them about maybe things that I was going through that they could relate to, or just, meet people outside of a PhD program and just have a life. I know a lot of you are, doing other things or maybe not even living in Stillwater. And so just making sure you have a balance for yourself is going to be really important, or else you're just going to exhaust yourself and maybe not even want to keep going with it. So keeping a balance is really important.
Yeah, I have a friend who she's the early career faculty at another institution, and she's married and she has kids. And so one of the things I remember her saying is that for her, it was like her family forced her to get out of that academic bubble for a while and to stop writing and go attend to them. And then after she had spent some time with her family and they were getting on her nerves, or was like, okay, I can't deal with y'all anymore. The writing gave her an excuse to go back to the research. So it became this seesaw back and forth. And I know many of you probably have families, or you're in developing relationships, or you have pets, and who knows what else. But I think, like Callie just said, finding that balance. And for me, it would even just be a matter of, okay, I've been working on this dissertation for hours on end, and I need to get up and go for a walk, and just even doing that. And sometimes my best ideas would come when I was out there on the trail. And then by the time I got back home, I was ready to launch back into my writing. And even like setting very small goals for yourself and treating yourself. So like, even if you had a day and you're like, you know what, I'm going to write 2 pages today, and they're going to be 2 good pages. And then I'm going to get together with my partner tonight, and we're going to go out to a movie, but I'm only going to be able to do that if I get these 2 pages done. So, and I know 2 pages doesn't sound like a lot, but sometimes when you're working on a dissertation, those small goals are so important, because the small goals will add up to the bigger goals.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody ever heard of this software Scrivener? It's an online based, you actually download it, but it like motivates you to write every day, and it organizes it in such a way that it makes it easy to put things together. I downloaded it the other day, and I really haven't used it much, but I was thinking, if I were starting a dissertation or even a new article, I need to try this to see, because of its structure and its reminders to write today, regardless of what it is. Write something every day.
Mm-hmm. And I think also developing a writing habit for yourself, and this is something that I'm still trying to work on as an early career faculty, is designating whether it be an hour a day, 2 hours a day. There's so much going on as a faculty member. I know there's so much going on when you're a doc student, but even just carving out that hour a day, it's amazing how productive you can be during that hour, and how then the writing will start to build on itself.
The other thing that I think is important is to kind of take everything a little bit with a grain of salt. I actually bought a book for you guys. I didn't buy everybody a copy, but can you see this? It's called Piled Higher and Deeper. And if you do a search for Piled Higher and Deeper comics, they're really funny, and they sort of make fun of the process of being a professor and being a faculty member. Like this one's really apropos since I had trouble getting the, can you guys see that?
Not really.
Maybe if I'd hold still.
We can't read it.
Anyway, okay, I'll read it. But they're really funny. And you can sign up for their listserv, and they send you one every few days. But the question is, how many PhDs does it take to get a power presentation to work? And the answer is N+1, which if you haven't taken your research classes yet, you'll recognize that. Where N equals the number of academics in the room who think they know how to fix it, and 1 equals the person who finally calls the AV technician. I think some levity around this process is really important too. And the fact that it's called Piled Higher and Deeper, it is an amazing accomplishment to finish a PhD. But if you finish it and your life is wrecked, it's not worth anything. So that's part of what we do as advisors and your committee members is help you keep that balance and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I would piggyback off of that with is, first of all, make sure the research that you're doing and you're studying is something you're passionate about, because the dissertation can be a very arduous process. So if it's not something that you feel strongly about, it's going to become drudgery very quickly. I think another thing, and this was something that was reminded to me a few times whenever I was going through my doctoral process through a friend of mine who had just completed her PhD a few years before that. And it's like, I know some of us in the room right now might be working full time, you're teachers, you're trying to do the PhD on the side, and you have a family, and there's all this going on. And some of you might be full time, doc students, which I know creates a different type of expectation load. But regardless, we are so fortunate to be able to be working on doctoral programs, to be able to study what we want to study, and especially for those of us on assistantships who might be being funded to study what we want to study. And also, and this is one thing my friend kept reiterating to me and some of us others when we were getting down, it's like, you don't have to do the PhD. Nobody's forcing you to do this. You're doing this because you want to do it. And so I think in those moments where there's that self-pity or there's that sense of frustration, just reassessing, why am I doing this? Who does it benefit? And I think that can help.
I completely agree with that. I mean, if you don't like what you're choosing to research, you probably shouldn't be researching it. I started researching my dissertation topic before I even got to UGA, and stuck with it because it was something that I loved, and I was solving a problem, and for me that was really important, to be able to impact students and teachers in a positive way. And that's the reason I'm still researching it, and that I still really like it. And so I think if it's something important to you, you're going to want to keep at it, and you're going to want to, push through and succeed and earn your PhD.
This would be a really good time. We've talked a lot in this class about what we're passionate about and how we tie in what we're researching and what we're doing in our coursework to our jobs. And I would love for you two to meet these fabulous students, because you may end up being on their committee. If you all will bear with me just so we don't talk at once, and I think my list of people may be in different order than everybody else. So if you'll wait for me to call your name, and then I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell them the one thing you're most passionate about. If you want to tell your job too, that would give them an idea of the diversity in the room too. Stacy Welch, you're up first. Can you go ahead and unmute your mic?
Sure. Hi. I am the lead education coordinator for the InSpace team, and probably what I'm most passionate about is just being able to recruit a diverse population, just the underserved population out there, and then get them engaged, so that a lot of our activities have an online component in order to get to be on-site. And so I want to make those underrepresented students, get them more engaged so that they're more successful and get on-site.
Perfect. Alex?
waiting for my doorbell to go off. I got people coming in. My name is Alex Gladney-Lemon. I work on the N-Space team. I'm one of the education coordinators. The current activity I work with is encouraging community college students to finish a STEM degree by involving them in a NASA course and inviting them to a NASA center free of their charge.
Oh, who's next?
I'm going to go next because Alex and I work together. So I'm Karen Wilson. I'm also on NASA Community College Aerospace Scholars. Like Alex said, we work on this project so that we can get the students, to have a way to connect college to career. And so one of the things that I'm interested in is the online course is what they have to do. It's a 5-week non-credit online course to be able to be eligible to come on site. And we get people that get all the way to the finish line and then don't do that last little piece. It's kind of like, I think, like becoming ABD, right? So you've done all of this except. But and so that's where my sort of angst and struggle is like, what will it take? Like, what do we need to do to the course to make them like so excited about it, or whatever it is for an online course to get them to finish? So that's my 2 cents on that.
Okay, Stacy Warner, will you go next?
Good evening. My name is Stacy Warner. I'm a professor of English at Oklahoma City Community College in OKC. I have a couple of interests. My main interest is looking at retention for underrepresented low-income students, primarily minority students. And I'm also really interested in looking at research also, believe it or not, on homeschoolers. And I have a reason for that as well, because I actually homeschool my kids also. So there isn't a huge body of research out on homeschooling, and so that's actually another area of interest for me as well. So,
okay, and also I would tell you guys that Stacy Warner's in the Social Foundations option. Brandon.
Yes, this is Brandon. I'm an activity manager at the NASA Johnson Space Center Office of STEM Engagement. One of the activities that I work on, and I apologize for my camera, it was working prior to class. It's not working very well right now. One of the activities that I manage was a startup. It was the first coding challenge that we had put together out of the Office of STEM Engagement at JSC. And we challenge undergraduate, graduate, community college, military academy students, any higher education student teams that can be mixed teams, mixed institutions. Institutions can partner and sponsor teams. So we challenge them to come on site and create informatics displays for the spacesuit for the purpose of assisting astronauts in the spacewalk. So my research interest, having kind of brought this activity together and having a pilot that was really successful, we're now moving into year 2. My research interest has been how do immersive technologies assist crew members or basically anyone in doing complex dexterous tasks. And so I'm looking at like a meta-analysis of what the student teams do and studying what they do and how all of that together shows the impact of immersive technologies on training. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment with it, but it's a work in progress for sure.
Great. Lakita?
Hello, my name is Lakita Lowe, and I work at Johnson Space Center in the Program Science Office. And what we do is we work with all of the researchers to get their station operated on board to get their research operated on board the International Space Station. So I work in the planning office. I'm most passionate about making bringing awareness to the science that's going on board the International Space Station. I do a lot of research, I do a lot of outreach at universities, specifically HBCUs, underrepresented, underserved, to underrepresented and underserved students, making them aware of the research that's going on board the International Space Station, and also working with professors at universities to see if there's an opportunity for them to get involved in the research that's going on board the International Space Station. So I guess I'm most passionate about just making the public aware of the benefits for humanity.
Great. Gianna?
Hey, I'm Gianna, and I work at OSU. I apologize for the dog. She's being very clingy today, so she kind of keeps popping in and out. But I work at OSU as a GA. I work in Crystal half the time for Dr. Utley and Dr. Cribs, whatever they need me to do. And then the other half the time, I supervise a tutoring lab at the RMC, where undergraduates get to practice actually teaching mathematics to elementary kids. My research interest is definitely just math education, since that is my option. I particularly am trying to look at ways of making the process of becoming an elementary teacher easier, especially and in trying to instill confidence in their math. So I always feel like if you can make a elementary teacher better at teaching math, you can make students that are more open to learning math later on in life. So, but one of the main problems that I've been looking into, because I'm very passionate about it, is the difference in standards between education departments and math departments and what they actually teach education majors, because there's a huge just miscommunication between the two, where one of them is so interested in the process and the other one's so interested in just, you know, this math. Therefore, if you know this math, you can teach good math. And I think there needs to be more communication between those two things.
Amen, sister. By the way, she mentioned Crystal, and that's the Center for Research on STEM Teaching and Learning. And that's a really neat place on campus and in our college that they're great to collaborate with on all kinds of projects. So we may have some of them as guests too. They've done a phenomenal job of doing grants and things.
Yeah, the people that work in there do a lot of cool stuff, and there's not just math people in there. There's a lot of people who are interested in engineering, like Drew, and there's a lot of people that are there for science. So it's pretty cool.
Great. Okay, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm also a member of the InSpace team here at Johnson Space Center. I work specifically on the STEM on Station activity, where we develop education content and opportunities involving the International Space Station to get them to classrooms so that educators and students can use them. My specific interest would be integrative STEM education and immersing that more or getting that more in the classroom, getting students more involved with integrative STEM education, getting more opportunities to students with that. And I think I'll be looking specifically at the Native American population.
Great. Arturo?
Great. So my name is Arturo Sanchez. I work here at the Johnson Space Center. I'm the Deputy Director of External Relations here at JSC. And our office includes Office of Education and Empowerment, as well as legislative affairs, public affairs, also and research. And then we handle a lot of our exhibits and interactions. And so we have a team of 103 folks, servants and contractors and part of the agreement. So that's my interest is actually still not quite as some folks curious about factors that influence underrepresented populations in their advancement through STEM, and ultimately at a place like NASA or at a engineering STEM-focused company. So just trying to understand that. Ultimately, the long-term goals are to work in student affairs on campus, and that's a long range. And hopefully, over the next few weeks and months, I'll be able to fine-tune this area.
Great. Gam, did I see you pop up? Oh, there you are.
Hi, my name is Yam Chaivisit. I work as a GTA and GRA at OSU. I teach applications of media and technology. And my passion about educational technology is that we can do anything with technology that can help students learn. And my passion is to help teachers design the innovative learning space for students to use. Yes, that's my passion, and especially for the kids in underserved communities that they don't have opportunities to use technology. So that's my passion that I want to do.
Great, thank you, Yam. Okay, John, can we hear you?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is John Davis. I'm also part of the InSpace team down at the Johnson Space Center. I am a former classroom teacher, science, math, robotics, for the past 15 years, and working as a teacher in underprivileged neighborhoods and socially economically challenged neighborhoods. My passion is to promote those students to pursue STEM careers. So that's where my passion lies.
Great, thank you, John. Abdul?
I work in Saudi Arabia in education college. I teach education technology courses. So my interest is in motivation, how to motivate students. I always read about motivation, how to motivate myself or how to motivate others. And this is my interest, and also in instructional design and online learning also is part of my interest.
Great, and you focused primarily on instructional design in your master's, didn't you, Abdul?
Yes, yes. My master was in instructional design and technology.
That's what I thought. Okay, and Io?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ayo. So my background is in telecoms management and international studies. So for this semester, I'm working half hour in the Emerging Technology and Creativity Lab, and with Dr. Asino and Dr. Cosin on the Spotting project. So on Spotting, we deal with drought monitoring, and we collect data from rural farmers. So we also work with public librarians in liaising with those farmers. So, and then my research interest is actually in looking at how educational apps are able to help elementary students in their studies. And I'm also looking into how to code and actually develop some apps too. Thank you.
Great. You and Brandon have that coding piece in common. Okay, question for Drs. Neumann and Dr. Crawley. We actually are missing two. We're missing Rachel, who she's real passionate about 3D printing and using different devices to transform learning. And then Kayla we're missing. And Kayla is very passionate about language literacy and culture. and they'll watch this, so I want to give a shout out to them. But here's the question for you guys. Could there be a better doctoral seminar class than this bunch? Do you love my class or what? These people are amazing.
And I think
So
we
I have
have
Yvette.
one more. Yvette Turner, it looks like.
Yes, Dr. Stansberry totally forgot me.
Gosh, Yvette, I'm so
Oh my gosh,
sorry.
I was waving and exercising and everything. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm embarrassed though. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Well, I'm Yvette Turner.
I'll owe you. I owe you lunch when you're up here, or I'm
So,
in.
on me anyway. I'm Yvette Turner, and I work here also at Johnson Space Center, and I have a unique responsibilities, if you will. But as it relates to the Office of STEM Engagement, my responsibility is technical officer over the in-space agreement, as well as some other responsibilities in what we're calling now our STEM Alliances Office, which encompasses all of our business and operations here in the Office of STEM Engagement. In addition, I'm responsible for our contract here at the Johnson, here in external relations that supports our communications outreach, multimedia, and information technology here as well, and some other things. So what interests me as I started out was looking at African Americans as they go into predominantly white institutions and their completion rate as compared to other institutions. However, I'm now beginning to kind of hone in on some other areas that I'm interested in, and I'm thinking it's more on maybe with women and what happens with women as they are with mentors. Do mentors really help women as they go into STEM doctoral programs? And I'm finding that there's a little information out there. However, there are a lot of different programs out there for which I didn't think about. I sit on the board of one organization who addresses this very need for people in general, not just women, but they focus on girls in particular, to actually have mentors as they go into STEM fields. And what I'm finding is that when they go into doctoral programs, having that mentor, somebody to be there with them through the path, they're more likely to not be ABD, but actually get that doctoral degree. So I'm somewhere in there, I'm passionate about the disenfranchisement of either African Americans or women. So somewhere in there.
Boy, and there might even be some crossover in there too, Yvette. That'll be interesting to look at the literature. Okay, now I want to hear Dr. Crawley and Dr. Neumann gush about how amazing this group of people is and how great it is to meet them. So come on, gush.
It is amazing, and I'm surprised I'm both surprised and pleased and overwhelmed at just the amount of expertise that's in this space. And I mean, we've got people who are working in STEM and space, which is not my field whatsoever, to math education, which is a little bit closer. Well, I know math is part of STEM, into instructional technology, which is a little bit closer to my realm. And then I think I maybe heard that there's a literacy person in there, or maybe it's not with us today. But just, I think it's wonderful that you have such a diverse cohort in terms of interests and expertise.
But literacy covers all of those, Adam, so you're part of all of them.
Right. And so one of the courses that we teach in literacy education is content area literacy. So we look at how is literacy used to inform instructional practices in math, in social studies, in science, in instructional technology, to help students be successful, especially students who maybe aren't as readily, successful in those fields. So how do things like vocabulary, how do things like reading strategies, what types of literacy are present in each of those individual fields? Like reading a science report is very different than reading a math report, and being able to comprehend those. So yeah, definitely literacy intersects with a lot.
I think I have one word to describe your class, and it's impressive.
It's our class. You guys are part of this too.
Our class.
I'm curious if we can. I know it's we're all on video, and so we can't all necessarily chime in together. But maybe if you could just show us with like your hand, what year are you in your program? So like, are you in year 4? Are you in year 3? Are you in year 1? If you were beyond 4, just maybe do like do 5, and we'll just say you're somewhere beyond 4. All right. So I'm seeing some 3 years, some first years.
This is the majority. It's their first semester.
Okay.
Em and Rachel, it's their second semester. No, Rachel, it's her third semester. Yam, it's her second. Everybody else, it's their very first semester.
And how many of you are thinking right now at this point in time that you want to go into higher education when you finish your doctorate? Like you want to teach at the college level? If you could just show us your hand if you're thinking you want to teach at the college level. Okay, so it looks like some of you, but it looks like a lot of you might have other interests beyond the doctorate. Yeah. Okay.
Possibly related to NASA. I think that's a lot of you who are not raising your hands. So.
We're hoping Arturo runs for president of the United States. So I don't know if the doctorate will help him, but.
I got to survive this first. I'm still hoping that you give us honest feedback as we go along to make sure we don't hit a major roadblock.
I think with the audio that he has right now, he could run for emperor.
Yeah, he could. It's kind of scary. Star Wars emperor. Yes.
I wanted to add for Dr. Adam that we were talking about literacy. So part of NASA's vision for the Office of STEM Engagement agency-wise, the enhancement of STEM literacy. So literacy does actually fit into STEM.
Yeah.
That is part of our vision, enhance STEM literacy.
Now there's a dissertation waiting to happen. What, has anybody thought of looking into that crossover between STEM and literacy?
That's a good one, though, a really good one.
I would say start with the lit review first, see what research is out there, and then find out what the gap is. And that whatever that gap is, that will lead what you might decide to research down the road, if that's your passion area.
And that's one of the assignments we're actually working on in class right now we're going through the literature search and review process and coming out with a strong annotated bibliography. And so that's one of the big assignments. And then I'm going to pop up, just for the sake of students, I'm going to pop up that list. I made myself a list so I wouldn't forget reminders. I'm hoping you're seeing a slide that says coming up. Are you seeing that? Okay, good. So October 23rd, Dr. Neumann and I are going to be at a conference, and so we're definitely going to meet asynchronously. We won't have a same time meeting, but I will have access to internet and that sort of thing throughout the week, so don't hesitate to holler at me. The online assignment number 4 is due on October 23rd, and that one's selecting a job description and writing a cover letter. When I finish telling you about these upcoming things, I'm going to ask Drs. Adam and Callie to talk about their experiences in job search and that sort of thing. But that's your next assignment. And then on October 30th, we'll also be asynchronous, so we won't meet on video. I'm going to do an instructor video on the dissertation proposal, but I'm going to make the video interactive. So while you're watching the video, it won't have to be at the same time, but there will be prompts as you watch through the video that I'll ask you, discuss this, and so you don't have to go through it at the same time, but it will have some interactivity to it. And then on November 6th, a lot of you are going to be in Stillwater. And so I think we're going to use that night to work on the literature search and annotated bibliography. And then you've also got the book review assignment looming on the horizon. So I'm hoping that maybe sometime during those, we'll plan a lunch that we can get together, and Dr. Crawley and Dr. Neumann and all these people that you probably are going to have in class or may be interested in having on your committee someday can come to our lunch and just sit down and meet with us. So those are the next 3 weeks coming up. But always holler at me if you have questions. I'm going to go back to unsharing the screen and then let our guest speakers talk a little bit about your job experience. I think your job search experience was horribly successful because you landed up right here with me at OSU, which is where I wanted you from the first time I met you both. So talk about that process.
All right. So do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I can start.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the biggest tip of your life right now, of your PhD life. And it is to remember that right around the time when you're doing your dissertation study, when you're doing your data collection, when you're getting all of these things in and starting your analysis, if you are wanting to be in higher ed, and some of you are, that's when you're going to be searching for jobs. And it's a very time-consuming process. So you're going to be doing that data collection and then be searching every day and getting job alerts and doing applications. And you shouldn't, I mean, you can, but you shouldn't just submit the same application everywhere, because the committees that are reviewing your applications can tell when it's not customized to their university. Do you want to jump in?
Sure. So one thing that I would even recommend you start doing now, and I realize that some of you are your first semester, so if you don't want to start doing it just yet, I understand, but I would definitely say as you start getting your second year, start looking at some of the job calls that come out. So if you're not a member of any listservs yet, or listservs that start having job calls come through them, I would. So like I know, for example, in my field, Literacy Research Association, LRA, is one of our big organizations. We also have International Literacy Association, ILA. So I'm on listservs with both of those. And like with the American Educational Research Association, AERA, if you're not familiar with AERA, it's massive, but they have all these smaller special interest groups, these SIGs that you can be a part of. And I mean, it's anything and everything related to education. So get involved like with those SIGs, get involved with these organizations, get on their listservs, and then you'll start seeing some of these job postings that come through. I would also look at there are websites like Higher Ed Jobs and Chronicle Vitae, VITAE jobs. I would go on those websites. You can actually set up accounts where you put in all these certain criteria of what you're looking for in regards to a certain type of position, and then every day you'll get an automated email of like, I get this email from Higher Ed Jobs today, and it's got 3 job postings. I get a Higher Ed posting from Jobs, tomorrow, and it's got 20 jobs listed. And just start just reading through those, see where the jobs are, read the descriptions, so that way, whenever you do go on the job market in a few years, especially if you're going to go into a higher ed kind of position, you'll already have a sense of what are the qualifications they're looking for, so you can start working on those qualifications throughout your PhD program, but also be thinking about what types of documents or what types of artifacts you have to submit as part of that application, because different academic jobs have different expectations in terms of what you submit. Like usually a vita is pretty standard, usually a cover letter is pretty standard, usually they want to see an official or unofficial transcript. But like I know here for Oklahoma State, I also had to submit a research statement, I also had to submit a teaching statement. Sometimes they might want you to submit something else. Of course you have to submit a list of references. So again, just start familiarizing yourself with what some of those jobs are now and what the requirements are.
I think one of the key things that he mentioned are the requirements of those jobs. So if you take a look at some of those postings, they'll typically have minimum requirements and then preferred qualifications. If you find something in the future and you don't hit those minimum requirements, don't apply. They're just going to toss you right to the side. I was lucky enough to serve on a search committee for a position at UGA right around the time that I was on the job market. And I was the student representative, and I learned so much. And that was the first thing that I learned was if they don't hit these 4 minimum requirements, we're not going to look at them further, because they are not going to meet the dean's expectations for what we put on this job posting. So if you're having to kind of bend and tweak, oh, maybe this kind of fits it, probably doesn't. It should be very clear. You should have clear evidence that you meet each of those minimum qualifications. So if you're looking at those now, it's great because you can make sure you have those minimum qualifications when you do go on the job market.
I think another thing to take advantage of, especially being, first year students or second year students or wherever you are in your process, is try to be aware if there's a current opening in your institution. So like here at Oklahoma State, I know this year we're hiring for an English ed professor. I know there's several other faculty searches going on in the college, because a lot of times when they bring in candidates to interview for these jobs, they will have, so part of the part of the application process is for the candidate to do a research presentation and sometimes a teaching demo as well. And a lot of times, especially those research presentations, are open to graduate students and other faculty being able to attend in addition to the search committee. So that's a great way for you to go, one, to be able to see who might be some professors that are coming into your institution that you might be working with, but also to be thinking about what you will likely be needing to do yourself a few years down the road. So I think that's a really good recommendation to think of even at this point. Another thing that I would recommend in terms of thinking about the job market, and I know a lot of you, again, are first year, second year, so you're thinking, this is down the road, the time will fly by. Go to your professional conferences. Again, like for me, it was LRA, ILA, NCTE, but what's really important is, first of all, go to these conferences, start presenting at these conferences, but also really try to start networking within those conferences and getting to know people at other institutions, and not only doc students, but also people who are early career faculty. Because for me, when I started getting closer and closer to going to the job market, I was really thinking about what type of institution do I want to be at? Like, do I want to be at a research intensive university, or do I want to be at a smaller school that maybe there's not as much research intensiveness, but there's a lot more of a teaching focus where you might be teaching 4 classes a semester? Because some people love doing that and they don't love the research as much. So what I started doing as I got closer to the job market was I set up conversations with faculty who I'd met from other institutions who I'd gotten into these conferences and just said, hey, tell me about your job. Tell me what a typical day looks like. Tell me what you love about your job. Tell me what you don't love about your job. And there were some types of positions that I was considering, but then because I love to teach, I thought, well, maybe I want to go to a more heavy teaching institution. But then after hearing a friend of mine talk about his position that he loves, I realized that I would not love it like he loves it. And that really helped me think about, okay, that might not be the best fit for me. And like, I really like doing the research. So a place like Oklahoma State was a better fit for me. And for me, one of the reasons I like Oklahoma State is because there's a balance of the research and the teaching. Because you find some places that are really heavy on the research and not as much on the teaching. And I didn't want that necessarily either. So I think research the schools that you're interested in, but then also start developing those relationships with people at other institutions.
And definitely attend professional conferences. For a lot of you ed tech people, it's going to be AECT is a really big one. And that's actually where I met Dr. Stansberry last AECT. And she
pretty
said,
much tackled her and said, and shoved an application in her face and said, I want you, get here.
And then I applied.
Embarrassing.
Well, and within each of those organizations, there's usually separate, smaller, divisions or what is SIGs? So research groups.
Assemblies.
Yeah. And get involved with those, because I met Dr. Stansberry at the teacher education division of AECT. That's kind of where I live and breathe. And you'll network really easily within those places, and that's where you'll make some of those connections that could lead to a job in the future.
And one of the things that I found at some of the conferences that I've been going to is a lot of times the different SIGs or the assemblies or whatever those smaller parts of the conference are, sometimes they would offer sessions specific for graduate students or doctoral students about going on the job market. So that way you were able to listen to people who were early career faculty who maybe had just gotten hired 1 or 2 years ago, and they talked about what worked really well for them. And so I found those types of sessions to be incredibly supportive. Another thing I would recommend, and this might come into play more when you're actually on the job market, but using spreadsheets. And I had heard this from people who had gone before me. So, oftentimes you're applying for multiple jobs. So I would just create this spreadsheet where I had different columns for here's the institution, here's who the search committee person is, here's their contact information, here's the other people who are on the search committee, here's what they're looking for. So I'd have a column for CV, a column for cover letter, a column for research statement. I'll be able to put X's, and then I would have columns for where I was in the process. Have I received an initial response from them? Have I been invited for a webcam interview? Have I been invited for an in-person? Because it can get kind of crazy when you're applying for different institutions and then you're hearing back from them. And then you've got, of course, all these other obligations as well. So spreadsheets can definitely be your friend in that regard.
And I hate spreadsheets. And so I basically use a ton of Google folders, and I would just, label it as, Oklahoma State University, and I put the date on that. Yeah, and then I had the date of whenever it was due. I had all of my required things that I needed in there, and then once I completed it, I had a completed applications folder where I dragged every completed application. So find a system that works for you, but be organized about it, because if you're not, you'll miss deadlines, and you're not guaranteed that they're going to look at your application if you miss some of those deadlines.
And just know the process takes several months. So typically what will happen is a job will be posted, a lot of different people will apply. Some of those people will be very well aligned with the position, and then some of the people who apply aren't really aligned with the position at all. And I think that happens for a lot of calls. And so those people will get weeded out. There's a search committee who's overseeing this application process. So there will be a chair, and there will usually be like 3 or 4 other faculty, maybe a grad student who's on the committee as well. That's another recommendation, is if you get a chance to be a grad student representative on a search committee, I would highly recommend that. So just be in conversation with your professors, find out if there's going to be any, faculty position openings going on, if you can be a part of that committee. I mean, I did that whenever I was at University of Georgia as a doc student, and I started like in my second year, and I would know there was going to be a faculty position coming up. And so I would go talk to one of the faculty members who I know is on the committee and say, can I be the grad student representative? And they kept saying, Adam, it's not your year. Adam, it's not your turn. But we'll keep you in mind for whenever, the time comes. And sure enough, eventually I was able to be on a search committee, and it was such a helpful process. Anyway, so there will be a search committee, and then they'll look through all the applications, and typically they'll narrow it down to like 5 to 8 people that they want to do a webcam interview or a phone interview with. And then from there, they will narrow it down further to maybe anywhere between like 2 to 4 candidates that they want to bring to campus for a campus visit in person, which will involve various meetings with different faculty groups, like the search committee, with grad students, with the dean, with staff who are in the office. Mm-hmm. And then you'll also have to do a research presentation. And then like for my interview, I also had to do a teaching demonstration. So there's all these parts. For me, I want to say my position to Oklahoma State, the application was probably posted in late July to early August, if I remember correctly. I think applications were due early to mid-October, so about this time last year. And then I want to say that the webcam interviews took place like in late November. And then I was invited for a campus visit in early to mid-December. So a lot of it took place during that first semester.
And I'd say I've noticed this trend because I've moved to Athens from Portland, Oregon, and I was itching to get back. I got halfway, which is good enough. But I was itching to go back, and what I noticed is really a lot of the West Coast schools weren't posting until January. And so, by that time, I'm already, having webcam interviews or going to campus visits. And so a lot of those, I didn't even apply for because they weren't posting them until later. So I think that, that observation has kind of continued. I've forgotten to take off all of my job alerts, so I get those emails all the time, and I think I've seen one West Coast school. So if you're interested in a particular area, start looking kind of soon, just so you can see if there are any trends about, when they might be posting, because a lot of the East Coast schools and kind of middle of the country post just earlier. They want to get the best applicant that they can, and I guess the West Coast is just behind and slacking. I'm not sure.
Or it might be that their academic year is different. I don't know. Like I've always kind of lived on the East Coast, so I'm used to school starting in early to mid-August.
Oh, that's true.
And then finishing in late April or May.
They don't start until the end of September usually. So that's probably why.
So that's a little bit of background about our search process.
Yeah. What questions
do you? We said the same thing at the same time.
Yeah. And I realize that some of you might be thinking this is a few years down the road, or I know some of you aren't looking at higher ed jobs either. You might be looking at jobs in other fields. So your situation might be a little different. We get that too. So
we're going to have some guest speakers come in too on different types of jobs that require a PhD and other places, non-academic PhD jobs. So that'll be good.
So again, I guess my biggest recommendation is just look at the types of jobs that you're interested in, look at what the qualifications are, and not just have to have a PhD or an EDD in this field, but like Do they want publications? Do they want you to present at conferences? And then whatever those expectations are, make sure you're constructing yourself in such a way that by the time that you apply for jobs, you have those qualifications. And especially if you're working on publications, just remember that's such a long process. I mean, there are some journals where it takes a year between when you submit the publication and when it actually goes into print. Now, there are some journals where it's a shorter time period, but you don't want to wait until your third year and then start saying, oh, I need to start getting some publications for my CV, because it might not give you enough time before you want to start applying for jobs.
And one thing that you'll see definitely with academic jobs, and I would imagine with some other jobs that might require a PhD or really want you to have one, is that emphasis on not only research, but some of the teaching and service. And definitely academic jobs are going to be requiring all three of those things. So the more you can do to build your resume up in each of those areas, the better. So definitely with publications, but with also just working on other research projects that you might be able to work on, serving whatever the professional organizations are or graduate student organizations, whatever teaching experience you can get is going to be good for your resume. You're muted.
Question for our guests.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Karen Wilson. You were talking about the different listservs that you joined. Could you go through those again? And again, as many of us are like all of 9 weeks into our into our doctoral program, that seems like the first jumping off spot, right? Is there something we should do before that so that we can just kind of see what's out there? I'm thinking that's would be my best place. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's another email and more things to look at.
So I know both for higher ed jobs and also Chronicle Vita, VITAE. I keep saying that because normally we think of Vita, VITA.
Right.
But anyway, you can just go on both of those websites and they have like a search box, or they have different places. I think with Chronicle, you can like check elementary ed, literacy, teacher education, and then you can just search for jobs yourself and just see what's out there.
And you can also create accounts on those and create job alerts that they will then email you whenever something's posted with whatever your criteria were. So for me, I was looking at both ed tech jobs, but also language and literacy ed jobs. So I had one alert for ed tech jobs, one for language and literacy. I had one that just had, all of my qualifications that I would, and I think I called it most qualified. I also had one for my ideal states. Right, so I had my northwest corner. Sorry, it wasn't Oklahoma. I had one for my ideal states that would come, and so I had a few different that were coming, and sometimes they were repetitive, but it at least informed me of which ones met my criteria.
Another good website.
Go ahead, thanks. No, please.
The other website I was going to mention is called The Professor Is In. Just Google The Professor Is In. So she is a former academic. She's a former professor who then decided to leave academia and go into writing her books about the job market and about being an academic. And so she has this blog, and I mean, it's everything from like constructing a cover letter to going on your campus visit to, it's just all kinds of recommendations. And she does this for people who are current graduate students or early career faculty thinking about just tips and strategies. So I think that's a really good website to check out as well.
Nice. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I keep kind of looking at this because I think about half of us from the Johnson Space Center cohort are, we are educators and we've come into this position, right? And so now we're dealing with a different sort of criteria than we ever thought probably that we were going to do when we said, yeah, I want to be a teacher when I grow up. And taking that and then working with this doctoral program to pretty much, at least for me, enhance what I'm doing currently. So when you're like, my husband was totally freaked out when I said, hey, we're going to go look at one of the assignments that we have coming up is that we're supposed to have a job, what's your ideal job and where is it going to be? And I'm like, where do you want to live? And he's like, we just got to Houston. So, so any kind of this stuff, like we're having to deal with a little bit of the reality check, what's real, what's not. And so it's kind of a, like, moving from Oregon to the opposite coast, East Coast, West Coast, and now, okay, now where you want to go next. And so now you're in the middle. So
Yeah, and I can relate. I have a partner, and so my partner and I had both lived in Georgia our entire lives. So as I was considering different jobs and applying for different jobs, I don't want to sound selfish and say I wasn't considering his perspective whatsoever, but I definitely was considering his perspective. And if we disagree on a place, I might still apply and see what happened. But I mean, there was definitely this conversation of, I'm looking at this job in Stillwater, Oklahoma. What do you think? And surprisingly, he liked the idea of Oklahoma better than I thought he was, because he was like, oh, there's Tulsa. Oh, there's Oklahoma City. Oh, and so for him, it was a different kind of adventure.
Right.
So I totally understand about having a significant other or having a partner who you really have to have those conversations and considerations with. I mean, it's important.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for that. I just needed a launching point, because I'm thinking, my goodness, I'm not there yet for the whole job search. Just got here. Well, a couple of years ago, but still.
Well, and you never know where that PhD is going to take you, Karen. I mean, if you told me at 30, 25 years ago, this is what I'd be doing, I'd have called you crazy. It's just, and now that I can retire, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. There may be things that crop up next year that I had not even realized that that's a career and want to go in that direction. So I think the thing that this is going to give you is the background and the tools to just go wherever you want when the opportunity does arise.
Yeah, certainly. Thank y'all.
And I think for a couple of us, our masters did that, because I think our masters allowed us to get the opportunity to work at NASA, because even being at NASA, we never thought, as a former middle school math and science teacher, I didn't know NASA was in my future. So having the masters in my back pocket got me here. So I definitely agree with Dr. Susan and what they're saying.
And I think that goes back to what I was trying to say earlier too. In those times, and there will be times in your doctoral process where it's stressful and you're thinking, why am I doing this? And you don't want to deal with it anymore. And I mean, everybody has the prerogative to decide, this is not for me and I'm going to leave the program. Like, I get that, and that's a thing. But also keeping that perspective of like, how fortunate are we to be able to pursue this, and what opportunities are we having, and what doors have been open for us that maybe aren't available to other people. And to really kind of think about that in terms of how you're approaching your program, and if you want to continue to proceed with it or not.
And one thing to remember is, if you don't currently have a clear direction for your research, that's 100% okay. Especially those of you who are in your very first semester. I think I was a huge anomaly when I got to UGA. I did know what I wanted to do, and I worked on it the whole time. I was very lucky in that regard, but that is not normal by any means. There are so many people that are, in their first semester, and they're just trying to learn and try to really figure out, what is it that I'm passionate about? What do I really want to study? So don't feel like you're, falling behind because you don't know. If you don't know right now, that's totally okay.
And for me, like, I entered in my doctoral program with a general idea of what I wanted to do, but every semester, every course, every conference I went to, it helped to narrow down that idea a little bit more and a little bit more. Like, I would go to a conference session and I would just hear something and be like, oh, I never thought about it that way. How might I incorporate that into what I'm wanting to do? And then that further streamline things. So just know that even if you kind of have a general idea, which it sounds like a lot of you do from the way you're introducing, it might be too broad right now, but as the more and more you go through the process, it will narrow and solidify.
And you want it to narrow, and you want to focus on something pretty narrow for your dissertation, because then all of that other stuff that you weeded out, that can be your research agenda later when you're done, right? So you want to have that kind of slice of whatever you're interested in, so that way you have a focus and you're not all over the place when you're doing your dissertation. It's like
just speechless.
Every time Raven barks, we get awfully happy in my house. Max and Maggie get all excited.
I left her outside. She was being annoying.
Well, and a quote that, was told to me at one point, and it continues to stick with me, and I think it might come into play here, is like, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. You know, so you might not have questions right now because you're not sure what questions to ask, and that's okay. And I would say, even us being early career faculty, there's a lot of we don't know what we don't know yet. You know, so like Susan has been here for a while, and she's a school head now, and she certainly knows a lot more about OSU, a lot more about the College of Education, Health, and Aviation than we do. You know, and so like we had a meeting with her a few weeks ago, and it was a new faculty thing, and it was invited to us, like, what questions do you have? And we're all kind of like looking at each other like, we're not sure what to ask, you know? So the questions will come, if not tonight, which we still invite questions, but they might come down the road. And I can't speak for Callie, but I know you're certainly welcome to always reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer questions.
You're welcome to reach out to me too. I won't bite much.
Okay. No, I'm not muted. Now, you guys know I start turning into a pumpkin about 9 o'clock. How are we?
We've got about 12 more minutes to go.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions for our guest speakers, we can let them go. And we can always get a hold of them. I think that's one thing I regret, is not reaching out to faculty and just going by their office or calling them up and saying, hey, that really interested me when you were talking about X. Can I talk to you some more? And I wish I'd done that more. I think that would have made a lot richer experience. I was a little bit too timid to do that. And I was also scared that I would reveal what an idiot I was. And now that I'm an old idiot instead of a young idiot, I wish I'd been comfortable with that. It would have made a lot richer experience. So if anything that you heard tonight, please don't hesitate to email. I'll put both of their email addresses in the chat or something, and you can come back to them. But please feel free to holler at these people. That's why we picked them to talk to you.
Yeah, Dr. Susan, I think I have a quick one.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to know how to differentiate between when a school is research-based and when they are teaching-based. Just like when you are talking about OSU is balanced between the two. So how do we really know?
So the Carnegie ratings, right? That's what they are, the Carnegie ones.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like Research 1 institutions, Research 2, 3, and I don't know what they are leveled at beyond 3.
Yeah, it's kind of like master's colleges and degree, which research-intensive universities can also offer obviously master's and undergraduate degrees as well. So I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, so there's the Carnegie classifications website, and you can go on there and you can type in, they have a lookup feature, so you can type in an institution and it will tell you what type of university it is for the most part. So like if you type in Oklahoma State University, as you scroll down, it'll say like doctoral degrees, higher research activity. So like a higher research activity would be a research 2, like an R2 in terms of intensity. So like University of Georgia, where we came from, if you search that, that would be doctoral research institution highest activity. So that's like an R1. So just know, like if it's a R1 or an R2, it's going to be more heavy in terms of the number of publications they want faculty to publish each year. Like at University of Georgia, faculty are typically expected to publish 3 publications a year. They want them to be in very like prestigious journals. Here at Oklahoma State, my understanding is the expectation is like 1 to 2 publications a year. They still really want you to be looking at those higher tier, journals. But then I have friends who are more like at undergraduate or master's institutions where doctoral degrees are not offered. And I think their expectation is like maybe 1 publication every 3 years, but they've got a heavier teaching load. Because like here at Oklahoma State, especially for early career faculty like Callie and myself, they're really trying to support us and give us time to do our research and get time to start developing some publications. So like we only teach 2 classes a year. But if you were,
A semester.
I'm sorry, 2 classes a semester. Yeah, we have a 2-2 teaching load. But if you were to go to a school that is not as research intensive, like I was mentioning earlier, like if you look it up on Carnegie, and it might say like a master's institution or an undergraduate institution, you might only have 1 publication every 3 years, but they're going to expect you to teach probably 4 classes a semester. So does that help to answer your question?
Yes, very good.
And when you are on the job market and interviews and stuff, one of the things that you'll want to ask is, what's the breakdown of the percentages? So being research, teaching, and service. So at University of Georgia, I don't know what, I think their research is up at like 60% maybe. They're supposed to be cranking out research in those top tier journals. If you're publishing in lower journals, they're not counted as highly, especially.
And like book chapters aren't counted quite as highly.
Right. And I think their teaching is 30%.
And like at some of those institutions, like they want you to be a quality teacher, but they're not going to look at as heavily at your teaching evaluations. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more like you taught your courses, your teaching evaluations are decent, but you're producing a lot of research. So we're happy about that. Mm-hmm. Or like here at OSU, like they want you to be getting those publications, but they're also looking at your teaching and they want you to have good teaching evaluations. And we also know that teaching evaluations can be skewed. And so there are other ways that you can show your quality teaching. Like I could have Callie come in and observe my class and give me feedback. I can bring in people from ITLE, which is like the Institute for Teaching and Learning, and they can come in and do observations, or they can like facilitate a mid-semester review process so that I'm getting feedback about what my students are liking and what they might need at this point in the semester. My point with this is, so we're having different artifacts that show the quality of our teaching. Mm-hmm. That's going to be valued at a school like Oklahoma State, where they want to see the research, but they also value the teaching.
All right. Thank you very much.
We have actually had people who were not rehired, reappointed, or tenured because of teaching struggles, that they had research, but they were not good teachers and they didn't stay. So that tells you a little bit too.
And I don't think that happens at UGA, mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
Okay. Is everybody else turning into pumpkins? Okay. Man, we really appreciate you guys coming. This is a lot to ask of you to guest speak and late on a Tuesday night, but we really appreciate it a lot. And I'm hoping that you'll meet some of these people face to face at some point or be on their committees.
That would be great. We appreciate the invitation to join you all tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Class, if anybody has any questions about assignments or class things, hang on and you can ask me, but let's let them go ahead and sign off if they want.
Okay.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye. So next week, I had popped up that one screen that had what we have coming up for the next 3 weeks. And I wanted to make sure everybody was pretty clear on those. So we're going to be asynchronous for 2 weeks in a row. And then I'm thinking on November 6th, that will be pretty asynchronous too. So we're not going to have face-to-face, even video, for the next 3 weeks. And I think that'll be okay. Just don't forget about class and don't forget about what you're doing. I'll bug you. Okay, everybody seems to be doing fine. Oh, Rachel, you got to join us.
Hello, yeah, I'm here.
Tell us about your conference.
It's going really well. I met people a lot here. Yeah, the flight got delayed, so I came here like 3 or 4 hours ago. But yeah, for a short time, I met people from other states. Some of them like you teaching and administration. Yeah, job. Yeah, so it's been great.
Good.
Thank you.
Are you doing lots of gambling or anything in Las Vegas that I should call motherly and tell you not to do?
Not yet, because tomorrow I have a presentation. So yeah, today I'm just gonna focus on maybe tomorrow.
Well, we filmed this whole thing, so you can watch what you missed, and we'll.
Thank you so much.
Too.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for hanging in. These tend to be kind of long nights with lots of talking, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If you don't have anything else, feel free to sign off, and I'll hang out about 10 more minutes in case somebody needs questions.
What about lunch or in November 6th?
Yeah, we need to plan that. Why don't you be in charge? Why don't you be our social director? I'm a terrible social director.
Okay, so are we going to meet for lunch together?
Well, what's going on November 5th through 9th, there a lot of our cohort who actually work at Johnson Space Center will be in Stillwater. And so I wanted to have some face-to-face time while we're there. So we'll think of something. Maybe we can just order a bunch of pizza and have it in the Emerging Technologies and Creativity Research Lab or something like that.
That's nice.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, hang up if you don't have any questions. If you do have questions, ask quick before I fall asleep in this chair.
Can you tell me if I still sound like Darth Vader?
No, you don't. What do you do?
I opened my laptop.
So it was like docked?
Yeah, but now I know that's how I can disguise my voice and people won't know who I am. So
You have to watch him though. He's apparently a Sith Lord, so he probably changed his voice back and forth.
We could tell what you were saying. It was just like disguised a little bit.
I'm so sorry. I did not know that was happening until I saw some fun posts afterwards. So
I'm just so proud of you guys. I feel like I'm showing you off to these other faculty members. And it's kind of silly. I should not be this maternal, but this is such an impressive group, and I just love hanging out with you.
Dr. Stansberry, I have a question.
Yes.
So I've been pulling quite a bit of research for the lit review.
Oh, good.
And so if we're looking at the topic and there seems to already be a substantial amount of research on that topic, should we feel a need then to think about doing something else since so much research has already been contributed to that particular topic, or don't let that be a deterrent?
Well, the answer to that question depends on where you are in your program. Like if you, right now, it's not that big of a deal. And what you're going to find in some of the vast amounts of research, if you start looking at, there's typically at the end of an article, they're going to say suggestions for further research. And those are good places to see, oh, here's a great idea. I could take this niche of it. Or if you could combine what you're seeing a lot of with some other discipline, or, if you could tweak it in some way. If you're at the dissertation stage and you're seeing too much of that you probably want to go the other direction. For right now, I'm really interested in you going through the process and learning the process of searching for literature, analyzing it, doing an annotated bibliography. So I'm not near as worried about you finding too much right now as I would be if you were doing your proposal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Did somebody else say something?
I'm going to let Stacey. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Yvette.
Oh, I was just want to say, Dr. Stansberry, this has been very helpful having the guests come in and just kind of speak from us from a reality standpoint. So I do appreciate that.
Good.
And check my message I sent you.
Yeah, I just saw that. One thing that I keep thinking is I'm being real picky about, I've been real picky about who I have asked to teach some of these classes, but I also have been real careful about if I'm having him come and talk to you on camera, you can assume that that's somebody I trust and that might make a good committee member and somebody I really want you to get to know. I'm not asking some of them.
Right.
So, okay. I should not say things like that when record button is hit. But Kayla may know this.
We appreciate it.
Because you're my kids. I'm your mom.
So I was just going to say that, Stacey, I appreciated your question because I know that there was from OSU, a very similar, almost exact dissertation written or published last year, and I thought, oh, for what I'm looking at, same kind of thing. So I'm hoping to maybe narrow down the scope or make it more specific or something, like you just said, Dr. Stansberry, that there would be a niche somehow that would make it more my interest, I guess, as opposed to just the general.
Kind of, that one day we talked about adding another brick to the wall. If that brick is already there, there's no need to have another one. So what could build on top of what they've done?
Right.
Dissertations always have that suggested research section in chapter 5 usually. So that's
as we look at the literature, then do we see that, like, if we see sort of like a way that it's starting to steer, is it okay that it doesn't just stay linear to what we started with, that it kind of deviates a little bit?
Yeah. The other thing I would do if I had to do it over again, I was sitting there listening to Adam and Callie talk, and I don't know if I wouldn't have gone up to one of them and said, what are you working on? What research project do you have going that I could take a piece of it? Because honestly, and you figure this out, you kind of, it's almost like instead of taking the course, you're taking the professor. You tend to really bond with and work well with some of them and not so much with others. And when you find those that click, it's really fine to go and say, what are you working on? I want to work with you. Is there a piece of it that I could do for my dissertation, help further your research? That's a great way to get a topic. It's of course, if it's, something that they're passionate about, but you would have figured that out before you ever went and asked them.
It can also, doing that kind of stuff, because I've been working at Crystal with Dr. Cribbs and Dr. Utley, I'm doing a lot of their data collection. Working really closely with them on that kind of stuff can also give you ideas of how you want to organize your data. One of the first things I figured out after, one of them went into a rant, because they tend to do that, they're fun, was that they actually have two different definitions of what a code book is. One of them wants it as a separate document. The other one wants it as a just really quick set of tables that she can access within the actual spreadsheet. And for me, I was like, both of them worked. Both of them were easy to code, but one of them just was better for me if I'm looking at my own data than the other. And so it can often give you ideas of how do you want to set it up? Do you want everything all on one sheet? Do you want to separate things into different sheets depending on what kind of data you're collecting? And it's just been very interesting because both of them work in the same field. They're both math education, but they have very different styles of data collection, data just like analysis, and just generally how they talk about things. So
they've got some generational differences too of when they went to school.
Oh yeah, you can definitely tell sometimes by the way they speak that they're saying the same thing, but they think that they're saying something different. It's pretty funny. I love it.
Okay, I think we're down to just a few. Yvette, are you still on here?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to visit tonight, or do you want to look at a time to make a phone call tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. My 9 to 11 meeting got canceled.
Okay.
Tomorrow, so any time during then would be perfect.
Okay. Do you do Outlook?
Yeah.
Okay, I will send you a meeting notice.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, everybody else doing okay? Rachel, good luck on your presentation tomorrow. Get some sleep.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Cool hotel room. Look, it's cute.
The room, you mean?
Yeah. You get frustrated. You can bang your head against that headboard.
Yeah. They gave me a big one. Yeah, even too big.
Were you surprised when you flew into Las Vegas? It's quite the place.
I just got here with the van. You mean what is your question again? Like
it's just so big and lights and stuff, and it's just Las Vegas. Is there any place like that in Korea?
Yeah, it's totally like Korea. You can see big lights all the time.
Oh, because I always thought if somebody came to the United States and only saw Las Vegas, they would have no idea what the real United States is.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're feeling at home.
Yeah, kind of. I feel energy here.
There's good shopping, so have fun with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good night.
Bye, good night.
All right, I'm hanging up if nobody needs me. Going once, going twice. Good night. Enjoy the cigar bar, John. You're so cool. Bye-bye.